the first time that we've had a public. We maybe met briefly at a conference, but we
Yeah.
never really had a full conversation.
No,
So,
not at all. Not at all. And I've been looking forward to it. I missed the last couple of conferences for this reason or that reason or
mhm.
something else. But yeah, and we literally passed each other in the halls of some of these events, and either I was preoccupied or you were or something. And so this is great.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Yeah, I've been to your conference at least three, probably four different times over the
Okay.
last 7 years. It is definitely is right up there with Beaver Creek as one of my favorite events of the
Yeah.
year. I love the city, the Big Easy. It's a great time of year to be in the Big Easy too. Around that, just as we're getting into fall, and I see you change the dates this year. It's usually at the end of October, but you moved it to
Yeah.
November 20th.
Yeah, I'd like to say that was intentional, but it was purely neglect on my part. We'd schedule these things at the hotel, 3 years in advance typically. And so 3 years ago, when I got the typical first week of November dates. So that was great, great day pattern and everything. But I totally forgot that it was the presidential election, which would have been absolute suicide. So about 18 months ago, we went back, and groveled in front of the hotel, and the only dates they had were these dates, which are because Thanksgiving in the U.S. is a week later this year. That's no
Mhm.
problem with that, but people still think it's going to conflict with Thanksgiving, but it's actually the week before the week of Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I just checked the calendar last night. I think it's actually, I think the dates are great. I have a feeling that this is going to be a great turnout for you.
Yeah, I hope so, and I think so. The market is helping. We're ahead of numbers in all respects, exhibitors and attendees from the last couple of years. But the issue with the dates this year is they conflict with some of the events in Germany and Switzerland. So that's
Oh,
hurting some of the sponsoring companies. But it's kind of a test too for the attendees because the smart companies are figuring out some way to divide and conquer with their staffs because the value for them of our event is, if you have a good story and you have somebody who can tell it well, getting in front of our audience is a slam dunk business decision.
yeah, I agree. I agree. It's a great crowd of investors, and it's a more dynamic set of investors that show up to your conference. Yeah, so I want to talk about the history of the conference. I don't know much about it, but I know it started in the 1970s. Can you tell us about how this conference got
Yeah,
started? Like, who founded it and how you got involved?
yeah, absolutely. The guy who started everything I do was a really charismatic character named Jim Blanchard. He was really one of the iconic early members of the Sound Money, Hard Money newsletter community, and was really individually was instrumental in getting gold legalized for American citizens. So when, August 15th, 1971, Nixon made his announcement that he was temporarily severing the dollar's link with gold, at least for, other central banks around the world. Jim knew that this was going to unleash the Fed and other central banks, and lead to a bout of inflation, accelerate deficit spending, everything else. And so he started Gold Newsletter that day, almost literally, to advocate for the return of the right of gold ownership for American citizens. So through a lot of crazy stunts and lobbying and things that he did, he was able to get that passed. On the last day of 1974, it was actually signed into the legislation was signed. And that spring, knowing it was going to happen, he decided to start a conference or have a conference to teach American investors how to invest in gold. And it's been running every year ever since. So it started in 1974. This is our 50th annual event. It's actually our 51st year, but we had to to skip one year because of Hurricane Katrina. Um, it's been going for 50 years. It's had an amazing roster of speakers that have graced our stage, from Ayn Rand's last public appearance to Lady Margaret Thatcher, Alan Greenspan a number of times, Barry Goldwater, uh, Milton Friedman, F.A. Hayek. The list goes on, but literally dozens of the giants of libertarian and sound money thought recent history have graced our stage. And I have tried to continue that. I started working for Jim in 1985 as a junior copywriter. And by 1980, due to his selling of his coin and bullion company and buying it back and a lot of other iterations, by 1990, I was running his business for him, and he passed away in 1999. At that point, I was a minority owner and bought the remaining interest from the estate and have been running it and owning it basically since the turn of the century. This century.
Oh, that's very interesting. So 50 years. Yeah. So you missed 2005 for obvious reasons, a cataclysmic hurricane.
Yeah.
But so this is the 50th anniversary then. Wow, that's super cool.
Yeah.
And another thing that stands out, the first year I went, I think it was 2017, if I'm not mistaken, and just sitting in the audience and listening to the different speakers come up, this is not a typical lineup of speakers at a mining conference. And it's not really a mining conference. It's a gold and investment conference. You've got speakers talking about, real estate and banking. It's a more diverse set of speakers. You have James Grant, George Gammon, obviously Rick Rule, and a number of other unusual, Doug Casey, like guys who don't speak at all the events, right?
No.
So can you tell us about the lineup of speakers you have and how you put this lineup together?
Yeah, our reputation obviously helps us in getting some of these speakers. People like Jim Grant have been speaking at our event for decades and a number of decades. And, as an example, this is the only event outside of his own in New York that Jim Grant speaks at. And he always, makes a point of it. Even if he has to fly in and fly out that day, he doesn't miss it. And so we have this great legacy. It's a wonderful thing, but trying to live up to that legacy can be a bit of a burden sometimes. But we have this legacy because we were created to teach investors how to invest in gold and silver. And because we have this history of advocating for sound money and personal liberty, we have always focused on geopolitics, macroeconomics, and then kind of drilled down into the various investment sectors, but always with a strong emphasis on metals and mining, as can be evidenced by our exhibit hall, which is like 85% junior mining companies. So we do cover that sector very well, I think just about as well as any other investment conference out there. We have a bit of a different business model in that the exhibiting companies don't present from the main stage. So if you're in our general session area and you're listening to a speaker on the main stage, he's not selling or pitching anything. He's talking about independent, objective analysis, real value-added analysis of some subject, whether it's macroeconomics, specific market sectors, et cetera, giving their strategies, their top picks, et cetera. The exhibiting companies only get 2 minutes on the main stage to tell the audience why they should come to their breakout sessions. So the companies have, at various sponsorship levels, have breakout sessions where the attendees can go listen to the companies they want to hear from. So it really works out best, I believe, for everybody involved. But our focus has always been delivering value, very high value, to the attendees. And our belief has always been that if we have very high level, highly qualified attendees, and we make them very happy, they're going to keep coming. And then, our speakers will agree to speak. We'll be able to get a high level of speakers, and we'll be able to get a high level of exhibitors as well. That, companies that have really good stories and can tell it well, they really want to be in front of this audience.
Yeah, so like for an attendee who arrives on the 20th, what can they expect in terms of the schedule? Like, how long are the days, and how many speakers, will they see on an average day?
Oh, the number of speakers on an average day, frankly, I've never counted. Probably, a dozen or 15 on an average day or so. We have great panels that, feature 4, 5, or 6 speakers at a time. But the first day, that Wednesday, we'll start basically about midday with a couple of free boot camp kind of sessions, about 45, 50 minutes long before the official opening, which this year, as I'm looking at our latest schedule, I mean, literally like the last person to ask about these things. We'll start about 3 o'clock, 3:30 with our official sessions, and we'll have a few sessions of speakers, a panel. Then we'll open up with a big gala reception in the exhibit hall, which, we like to bring the best of New Orleans into the event. So you have incredible food and music and entertainment in the exhibit hall, and can visit with exhibitors. Then every day it starts about 7:15 in the morning with breakfast sessions, and it goes on till typically 9 o'clock at night with workshops and other evening events. We'll have receptions in the evening and open uh, uh, events sponsored by companies that you can attend and eat and drink and mingle with other attendees and companies. So it is a really fun, because there's a lot of entertainment associated with it, but it's really enlightening in that our attendees, you'll see them in the morning at 7 o'clock taking notes, and you'll see them at 9 o'clock in a speaker's workshop taking notes. And it's just amazing, our audience, how intellectually curious, and information hungry they are. And these are all people who self-direct their investments. They're not your typical investors. They have a lot of money to put in the markets. They're very successful, and they share our ideas, their ideas, with other attendees. So it's a wonderful community. It's one of those things you have to really experience to truly understand.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if you're a gold investor, a mining investor, or just an investor, period, it's a must see and must experience conference. I highly recommend it. Brien, what do you think $2,700 or $2,600 gold does for the conference in terms of attendance, in terms of sentiment? What's your vibe on this gold bull market? I mean, we've never been here before.
Well, yeah, we've never been here before in terms of price. We have been through some spectacular bull markets, but there are a number of characteristics to this bull market that are unlike anything we've ever seen before. Primarily, the two big factors that launched the market were the central banks buying hand over fist, and Chinese investors slash savers buying aggressively even as the price was rising. That's another thing we'd never seen before. But the Western investors were largely absent from this bull market until they started to price in the Fed pivot. And that came around, literally almost the first couple of days of July. We saw the holdings in the GLD ETF start to rise, and we saw the open interest on the COMEX start to rise as well. We saw GDX start to leverage gold. Really, a couple of weeks ago, we saw a big uptick in that, but that kind of started the early August to some degree. So we're just entering that more familiar kind of a bull market where we get Western investors chasing the price higher, but also bringing with it a certain level of volatility, rallies and pullbacks, but generally speaking, higher highs and higher lows. So it's starting to get that kind of familiar feel. The key is that the gold price, to me, or one of the keys for investors in mining stocks, is that we are at, I put out something a few weeks ago that $2,500 gold changes everything. Well, now I have to revise that very quickly to $2,600 gold, and it won't be long at this rate before we say $2,700 gold. And the market is still trying to assimilate this big surge in gold, and the market has yet to re-rate a lot of these optionality plays in gold. These companies have bought gold long when projects could be had, at a song, but the projects were not economic because they needed higher gold prices. For all of those out of the money optionality plays, literally all of them at current prices are not out of the money any longer. They're very much in the money. They may have other issues with them, permits, or depending on where they're located, they may have other issues that may slow their development. But on an economic basis, they are all in the money, and a number of them are actually feasible now. So that's an area of real opportunity because the market has yet to re-rate those according to the current gold price. And those companies, as you know, their pitch decks typically show sensitivity to the gold price at various levels. And on the upside, they may have $2,100 gold as, on the upside on that table showing what the economics do at $2,100 gold. None of them have $2,500 gold, much less 26 or 27. So the economics for these projects are they just sing at these prices, but their valuations are still typically well under $10 an ounce in the ground. So I think that's an area of real opportunity that this market has not had a chance to price in these kinds of metals prices.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, I think the highest sensitivity gold price I've seen in a company presentation so far is 2350. So we haven't gone to 2500 yet, but I'm sure that's coming very very soon. What, like, are you noticing anything in terms of either investor signups or company signups for the conference in the last couple of weeks as this gold price moved through 2500 and then moved through 2600 and now this morning getting close to 2700? Are you noticing any more activity?
Yeah, I am. But I've looked over obviously many years at our event to try and get an idea of, you know, what kind of a market gauge is it. And exhibits and attendance are a great gauge, but it lags. You have to have the junior market really excited, which it isn't right now yet, before you get this big influx of exhibiting companies, and to some degree attendance, but individual investor attendance. But our attendees are very smart, so we never really get below a certain level. Even at the bottom of a market, we don't get below a certain level. We always have a fairly healthy attendance. But what the big indicator to me is what those attendees are doing. Some years, we think it's the bottom of a market, and our attendees, they'll go in the exhibit hall, they'll talk to the exhibitors, but they're not really energized or buying. A couple of years ago, actually about a year ago, last year's event, they came in and they were very enthusiastic, and they were buying hand over fist. And that has always, to me, marked the turn in a market, is when our attendees are very active and decide that the prices aren't going any lower. So, I think obviously we have the bottom behind us, but that was last fall, and they were a few months ahead, 4 or 5 months ahead of the big turn in the metals, but they were buying uh, uh, quite eagerly back then.
That's very interesting. Yeah, I remember last year's conference, and yeah, the gold price and the junior mining sector wasn't doing great last October, but seemed like the mood was better than one would expect last year. So that, yeah, that was a good sign, and I guess you call it a leading indicator. Um, yeah. So it'd be interesting to see this year, to see what the turnout is, to see what the sentiment is like. And in November, the week before Thanksgiving, I was looking to see if there's a football game the weekend after, but the Saints have a bye week, Brian. You scheduled
Yeah,
it.
that was a downside, but the LSU is playing actually
Ah,
next
okay.
Saturday. They're playing Vanderbilt, which is not a marquee game, but
No.
one we should win. But for the opportunity to experience a night game in Tiger Stadium, I've had a few of our characters in this industry that come down and do that,
Hmm.
and they were completely blown away. It is like nothing else you will ever experience. If you are a football fan, it is the thing to do, and an opportunity not to be passed up.
Very good. New Orleans Investment Conference 2024, November 20th through 23rd in the Big Easy. I plan to be there. Brian's going to be there. It's his conference. I highly recommend it. It's a must attend, event every year. Thanks a lot for your time, Brian, and I'll see you in the Big Easy.
You got it, Robert. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Cheers.